One of the concerns that a lot of proponents of checkpoints in general, be they sobriety or immigration checkpoints, have is that they consider them more efficient in order to be able to identify either drunk drivers or illegal immigrants or some other issue of concern to law enforcement. They consider a checkpoint to be an efficient use of resources. My research, however, has indicated the exact opposite. And I'll take sobriety checkpoints, for instance, because that's where the most documented data actually exists. There was a study done out of Tennessee back in the late 1990s that encompassed a 3-year time frame in which suspicionless sobriety checkpoints that were being conducted throughout the state, where all the data was collected together over that 3-year period and analyzed. Not only that, they were looking at statistics related to non-checkpoint operations, but that had the same goal in mind. For instance, they would compare roving patrols that were out looking for drunk drivers and only stopping people based upon reasonable suspicion of wrongdoing versus statistics associated with actual checkpoint operations where everybody who was passing through a particular geographic area was being stopped and queried. And what they found was that the roving patrol operations were far more efficient, both in the number of arrests and in the manpower used in order to remove drunk drivers from the road. Specifically, this 3-year time frame, which involved hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of drivers during that time frame, they only had a 0.6% arrest rate for drunk driving. So that means 99.4% of everyone who was stopped at that checkpoint were cleared for not driving under the influence. The study did not include the number of successful prosecutions out of that 0.6% that were actually arrested at checkpoint operations. So we don't know what the final numbers were with regards to prosecutions. What they did then was compare that 0.6% arrest rate against the arrest rate associated with roving patrols, where people were only pulled over based upon reasonable suspicion. And the arrest rate for those types of operations was 10 times higher. So there was a 6 to 7% arrest rate based upon roving patrols. Not only that, when they added up all the man hours associated with checkpoint operations versus roving patrols, they found that the roving patrols used 33% less man hours in order to realize a 10 times increase in the number of arrests for drunk driving. So if you want to break it down in terms of efficiency and ultimately saving lives, then roving patrols were far more effective at removing drunk drivers from the road than checkpoints ever were. And the added benefit of a roving patrol was that 99.4% of the people stopped weren't either inconvenienced because the police lacked some sort of reasonable suspicion to initiate the stop in the first place. And this study has been recreated across the country. I've been following specifically the statistics associated with Pima County Sheriff Department sobriety checkpoint operations over the past couple of years. The Sheriff's Department, they publicize their statistics online, so you can go right to the source and you can compare that to their arrest rates for roving patrols with regards to drunk drivers over the course of the past 10 years. I believe they have their statistics up. And lo and behold, when you look at the number of vehicles stopped at checkpoints versus the number of arrests, you have a 0.6% arrest rate, almost the exact same number that the Tennessee study found several years ago. Furthermore, we've been able to also correlate the arrest rate at checkpoints with the number of successful prosecutions. And once you throw in the fact that not all cases are successfully prosecuted, the actual prosecution rate is 0.3%. So that means 99.7% of the 200,000 or 300,000 people who have been stopped at a suspicionless checkpoint were not guilty of driving under the influence. So the question becomes, if those same resources that were used for checkpoints had been instead used for roving patrols, how many additional individuals would have been taken off the road and how many lives would have been saved because those drunk drivers who were not identified at checkpoint operations but would have if they had been roving patrols set up, what would have been that differential? The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which is the federal agency that doles out most of the money that is used by local jurisdictions across the country to conduct checkpoint operations. This agency actually admits on paper that the arrest rate associated with checkpoint operations doesn't even come close to roving patrols. But they try to legitimize checkpoint operations on the basis that they are an effective deterrent, that just the mere presence of the police out in such force at checkpoints represents an educational tool and a deterrent for individuals who drive drunk. But the fact of the matter is that after years and years of checkpoint operations from across the country, there is no noticeable decline in the number of drunk drivers that are being taken off the road, be it from roving patrols or from checkpoint operations. And consequently, there is no statistical data that can back up the claim that checkpoints serve as a good deterrent from driving drunk.